I'm going to start this off by saying that this video will contain spoilers for the finale of the Amazing Digital Circus. Not only will I briefly go over certain things that happen in the finale, but I will also be showing off images from the finale. If you have yet to watch the finale, then I highly suggest not watching this video. Don't say I didn't warn you. Earlier this month, I put out a video going over the popular animated web series The Amazing Digital Circus. This was shortly before the 2-week-long theatrical release of the 9th and final episode of the show. Prior to that, the finale got leaked online. I obviously made sure to avoid any spoilers for the finale, but those that did watch the leaked version had very polarizing thoughts on it. Now, when I reviewed The Amazing Digital Circus, I went over how I liked the show, but I didn't love it. There were certain things about the show that prevented me from truly loving it, and knowing that the finale was potentially underwhelming further prevented me from being more engaged with the show. I saw the finale in theaters opening night, and well, I can't say that I didn't have fun watching it in theaters. The theatrical experience was fun, but the finale itself just left me thinking, that's it? That's how this show ends? It's not even horrible, necessarily. It just doesn't work as a final episode. There are too many things established in the earlier episodes of the show that were either left completely unresolved or were resolved in an unsatisfying and anticlimactic manner. Oh, they establish in episode 5 that Ragatha had an abusive mother prior to ending up in the circus. I wonder what they'll do with that. And then they end up doing absolutely nothing with this character detail for the remainder of the episodes until the very end of the finale, where they just casually bring up, oh yeah, Ragatha's real-world counterpart cut ties with her mother, as what feels like a quick throwaway, easy-to-ignore line. Okay, so what was the point of establishing this specific character detail if you're not only going to do nothing with it, but also resolve it in such an underwhelming, anticlimactic manner? It doesn't make any sense. There is actually no reason to care about or get invested in everything that they set up and establish with Kinger in the earlier episodes. They establish that he played a part in the creation of the Amazing Digital Circus, they establish all of this stuff with his wife, and then they do absolutely nothing with any of it. Kinger goes from being a highly crucial character to the plot of episode 8 to contributing literally nothing of importance to the plot of episode 9. The plot twist, if you can even call it that, where it turns out Kane is actually alive and he wants to become a good guy now, doesn't feel satisfying or earned because of the limited amount of episodes that this show has. There's no way they could be able to pull this off with just 9 episodes. If they had more episodes, this would work significantly better. If they killed off Kane, had a few extra episodes of the show proceed without Kane, and then have the plot twist that Kane is still alive and wants to redeem himself in this alternate final episode, then it would be fine. The pacing just feels off for this. In all future rewatches of the show, it'll feel rushed going from Kane is evil and wants to hurt the other characters, but then he dies in episode 8, to Kane is actually still alive and he wants to become a good guy now in episode 9. It doesn't feel as rewarding as it wants to be. It doesn't feel as rewarding as it should be. That's just a small sample of the problems that I have with the finale. Maybe the title of this video is admittedly a little bit clickbait. I just technically reviewed the Amazing Digital Circus finale very briefly, but I don't plan on making a full video going into more detail on my thoughts on the finale for several reasons. Something that I made very clear in my initial video on the Amazing Digital Circus that I'm going to reiterate in this video is that I jumped onto the hype train for this show at the last minute. This show started in October of 2023, and I didn't start watching the show until earlier in May. In a way, this might have been a good thing. The fact that I got into this show was super late. I cannot imagine having to wait these long gaps for the episodes to come out, especially with how the finale turned out. As I was working on my initial Amazing Digital Circus video, I just started getting this vibe that I probably shouldn't make a video on the finale, even with the knowledge that it wasn't very good, allegedly. I just had that gut feeling that whatever criticisms I would give to the finale, regardless of how constructive and valid they may be, would come off as inauthentic and disingenuous coming from me, because I had only just watched the show for the first time very recently. This feeling was made even stronger by the fact that, again, although I liked the show, I didn't love it. I'm not going to pretend that I wasn't interested in the show. I'm not going to pretend that I wasn't interested in seeing all of the characters and what would happen to them in the next episode and their backstories and whatever. But as I continued watching the show, I kept thinking, do I see myself ever becoming a devoted fan of this? Do I see myself ever coming back to this show once I finish it? Knowing that the finale was, at the time allegedly, not that good didn't help matters out at all. Then I watched the finale, and it completely cemented that this was a show that I would very likely never come back to. This finale not only gave me absolutely no reason to ever rewatch this entire show, but it also made watching the show in the first place feel like a colossal waste of time. Yeah, I'm going there. Sorry, not sorry. That being said, I don't know. I kept thinking about it more, and I just had that gut feeling that it wasn't worth it. There would just be this disingenuous feel to the whole video. I made this clear in my initial video, but I wanted to wait the 2 weeks until after the finale was released onto YouTube, despite watching it in theaters, because I wanted to make sure that this video would turn out perfectly. I knew that this video wouldn't turn out anywhere near as good if I had made it immediately after I watched the finale in theaters. The idea was that I would wait until the finale comes out on YouTube, maybe record myself rewatching it, akin to what I did recently with one of the Hell of a Boss shorts, and then resume work on my review for it. Because of the claims made from when the finale was leaked that it wasn't very good, I thought very carefully about if I wanted to do this for the finale, but after watching it in theaters, I made my final decision. My review of the Amazing Digital Circus's finale was going to be a search for the worst cartoon. I understand that by doing this, I would have been breaking several different rules that I have for the search for the worst cartoon, something that I went over in the introduction of the video from what little I made of it, but I was so underwhelmed by how the finale turned out that I decided to make it a search for the worst cartoon. I deliberately refrained from making any search for the worst cartoons since the mating season review in late May for this very reason. Hey, that rhymed a little bit. After the finale was officially released in theaters, a lot of discussions from people online regarding the finale would naturally follow. The more I looked into these discussions, the less willing I became to review the finale. I started getting reminded of this seemingly important detail that I was someone who had just recently watched this show for the first time, while these were people who had very likely been following the show since the very beginning in 2023. And again, I must remind you all that while I don't hate the show, I'm also not a super huge, super dedicated fan of it. This gut feeling that I had of this video being inauthentic kept rising and rising up as the days went by. I had tons and tons of questions racing around in my head regarding this video. Do I really want to make a video on this finale? Will this video turn out well? Do I even truly care about the stuff that I would go over in this movie? There were undeniably things to go over with the finale. It's not like it didn't give me any material to work with, but I didn't know if this material would come off as genuine coming from me. This is something that I have never experienced before with any video. Search for the worst cartoon, movie reviews, you name it. There are things that I wanted to go over regarding the finale, but I didn't know if any of it would feel right coming from me, given the circumstances, given my non-existent relationship with this show. Other people make negative reviews of the finale, they'll feel genuine because they are longtime fans of the show. I make a negative review of the finale, it won't feel genuine because I had just recently watched this show for the first time, and I don't even like or care about it all that much, to be honest. A very common criticism of the finale is how heavily it focuses on the highly controversial character Jax. The finale extensively focuses on Jax's backstory, her, I don't know, I guess Jax is trans, I have no idea. I never got that at all when watching the finale, that like Jax is trans, but I guess that's like the people headcanoned it, and then like I guess Gooseworks confirmed it. I don't know, okay? The fact that Jax is trans has no effect on my thoughts on the finale, alright? Do not get the wrong idea, please. I don't know what pronouns to give this character, okay? I'm sorry. The finale extensively focuses on Jax's backstory, her abstracting, which is supposed to represent death in this show, and her relationship with two abstracted characters who were previously teased throughout the show. Now, all of this would be perfectly fine if, number one, this wasn't the finale, and number two, the other characters got the same equal importance in regards to their backstories. There's a scene in the finale where Pomni learns all about Jax's past, and it's a scene that goes on for what feels like an eternity, and it's like, the further I got into this scene while watching it in theaters, the more I began to realize, oh, so that's why people said the finale wasn't good when it leaked. Now I understand it. It's not a bad thing, the fact that they focus on this character's backstory, but it feels imbalanced when compared to the other characters. I know Gooseworks has claimed that Jax is actually the main character, and that she sees herself in Jax or whatever, but I never got that vibe watching the earlier episodes that Jax was the main character. At no point while watching the pilot did I ever think Jax would be a significantly more important character to the storyline than Ragatha or Gangle or whatever. It felt like the three of these characters were all equally important to the storyline. But I guess that's not the case, actually. I guess that's not the case. I made this very clear in my initial video as well, and I'm gonna make it very clear again. I could not care less about the discourse surrounding Jax and her controversial nature. I'm glad that I don't love this show as much as other people do, and I'm glad that the finale turned out underwhelming, because it means that I don't have to ever come back to this show, which means that I don't ever have to get involved with the discourse surrounding this one specific character. I have way better things to do with my life than get into arguments with people online over a purple cartoon rabbit who looks like a f***ing Mickey Mouse Clubhouse reject. That being said, though, it strikes me as not being fair. The fact that when it comes to exploring the backstories for these characters, Jax gets an all-you-can-eat buffet, while the other characters get breadcrumbs. Gangle's backstory is nowhere near as fleshed out. Zubal's backstory is nowhere near as fleshed out. Pomni's backstory is nowhere near as fleshed out. Kinger, they established as being like this super huge important character. He contributed to the creation of the circus and all that, and his backstory is treated as not being as important as Jax's backstory. It's not a big priority like Jax's backstory. That doesn't feel fair to me. That doesn't feel fair. There is no reason to ever care about or get invested in the other characters and the hints of their backstories sprinkled in throughout the earlier episodes when none of them get fleshed out the same way Jax does. It's like there already weren't enough reasons for me to never rewatch this show. Again, though, it just wouldn't feel right having this criticism come from me. Something about it wouldn't feel genuine. This exact same criticism that the finale focuses too much on Jax would feel much more authentic coming from a longtime fan of the show. I would really have to try my hardest to pretend to care about what I would be talking about in this review. As I patiently waited for the finale to come out on YouTube, I kept thinking about ways to flesh out my criticisms, and then one day, I realized that it would all be for nothing. I kept thinking about how I was going to go into detail about the finale, heavily focusing on Jax over the other characters, or the unrewarding redemption arc for Kane, and then I realized realized, wait a minute, I don't even care about this damn show. I don't know why I would be going over any of this stuff in great detail, as if I was a massive fan of this show who was following it from day one, as if this was a show that I would give any thought or attention to at any point in the future. There would just be this disingenuous, inauthentic feel to the whole video, and that is one major reason why I decided not to go forward with this review. Then there's the other reason. The fandom of this god-forsaken show. As soon as I finished watching the finale in theaters, I started to read through what other people had to say about the finale, and Jax as a character, and just the whole show in general, and it didn't take long before I went from being interested in the discussions surrounding this show to being completely exhausted every time I saw a single mention of this show, positive or negative. I was going to make this review from the perspective of someone who had just gotten into the show, wanted to become a potential fan of it, and was underwhelmed by how the finale turned out, effectively preventing me from becoming a much bigger fan of the show. Looking through what people had to say about the finale and Jax and just the whole show in general, it made me realize not only would the stuff I say about this finale feel disingenuous coming from me, but I also don't know if I really care about any of this stuff in the first place. It became very obvious to me very quickly that other people are significantly more dedicated to and obsessed with this thing than I could ever be. I quickly became overwhelmed by the constant discussions surrounding this entire show, both positive and negative. The constant back and forth argument regarding this one stupid character. I see people call this character the most evil and irredeemable character in cartoon history, a character who is just plain awful and abhorrent, and then I look at the actual character and it's just, okay, he's snarky and mischievous, she's snarky and mischievous, I have no idea, just like Bugs Bunny or Bart Simpson. What's the big deal? I saw people frequently bring up this one scene from the McDonald's episode where Jax throws Ragatha into a deep fryer, and I see people bring it up as proof that, oh, this is proof that Jax is an awful, abhorrent, and evil, irredeemable character. And then I watch the scene that they're talking about, and it's literally just a f***ing Tom and Jerry joke. Replace Jax with Jerry and Ragatha with Tom, and nobody would complain despite being the same thing. It's fine when something like Tom and Jerry does this joke, but it's bad when this show does it, because exactly why? It's like, this is like something you would see on Looney Tunes or SpongeBob, you know? Doesn't SpongeBob have jokes where it's like, oh, Mr. Krabs falls into the deep fryer, Squidward falls into the deep fryer, you know? It's like what's the difference, man? What's the difference? I don't doubt that there are legitimate reasons to hate this character. Hell, I'll admit that Jax's whole shtick of being snarky and mischievous got old pretty quickly. I could see it maybe being funny in the first episode or two, and then by the time I reach the 5th episode, it has gotten old and stale, and it leaves me wishing that they would do more with this character beyond he's a nuisance, she's a nuisance, I don't know, to the other characters. Little did I know that by wishing for that, the monkey's paw would strike yet again. I don't doubt that there are good reasons to hate this character. I can understand why some might be turned off by the mischievous attitude of this character, but some of the criticisms strike me as feeling very security system takes control of Squidward's house and begins attacking the city. You know, it's like, it's nice to see that 2014 era Mr. Enter never truly left us after all these years. I thought that we as a community had long moved past this crap, but I guess not. I don't wish for this video to take a sudden serious turn, but I suffered a really bad mental episode the other day, and something about this specific mental episode made me realize that it was not a good idea to go forward with a review of this finale. It's like this weird thing where any and all sides of the discourse surrounding this show annoys me to no end, regardless of whether I personally personally agree or disagree with the takes themselves. I don't want to deal with the people who also don't like the finale, but take it way more seriously than I do. I don't want to deal with the people who like the finale and will blindly assume that I support the finale getting leaked or Gooseworks getting harassed or whatever just because I don't like the finale, as if either of those things are get out of jail free cards to make the finale exempt from any and all criticism. I don't want to deal with the people who go on and on and on about how, oh, it's actually super problematic to ship Scrimblow Bimblow with Glup Shido. You're literally glorifying and romanticizing abuse by supporting this ship. I think we're gonna have to cancel you for supporting this problematic ship. Oh my god, that's another thing right there. That's another thing right there. I am so fucking glad that I don't care about shipping discourse in any way, shape, or form for any piece of media that I like. I have never been more grateful to not care about something before in my life. Good God, man. You know, I play like Sonic and whatever. I play Sonic games because they're fun. I like Sonic because it's a funny blue hedgehog who runs fast. I don't care about shipping. I don't care about Son Amy or Son Alley or whatever. I don't care about that stuff. Get that out of here. You know? I don't want to deal with the people who are like, oh, the Gleep Scrungo show is actually super racist and misogynistic and homophobic and transphobic and anti-Semitic and every single bad thing that you can possibly think of. Someone that worked on the Splunk Valunk show made an offensive joke years ago when dinosaurs were still roaming the Earth. Someone who worked on the show made an offensive joke during a time when it was considered okay to make offensive jokes on the internet, during a time when some of the most popular YouTubers had their whole shtick be making offensive and edgy jokes. I think we should cancel this guy for making these offensive jokes. Never mind the fact that this was a different time. Never mind that this was back when this sort of thing was considered acceptable on the internet. Never mind the fact that he would eventually apologize for making these jokes. That's clearly not enough. I can't believe that this man would ever do such a thing. Everyone knows the internet in the mid to late 2010s was a clean, wholesome, family-friendly place with absolutely zero poorly aged, edgy, offensive jokes to be found. I would genuinely hate to see the look on y'all's faces when you find out the only time Has Been Hotel ever made me laugh. Seriously. If you know, you know. All of this over what is essentially a Nick Jr. cartoon, except the characters sometimes reference depression, which means that it's actually super serious and deep and dark, and it's on par with Breaking Bad and The Sopranos. Whoa, guys, it's so dark and gritty. It's totally not for kids. Forget the cartoony art style or the fast-paced, quirky, low random humor. No, the characters sometimes reference their trauma. That means that this is a mature big boy cartoon for mature big boys like me. No kids allowed. I've got to be real with y'all, and I know that I'm gonna get hate for this, but I don't really care, to be honest, at this point. I don't really like most modern day cartoons. And now when I say that, I ain't talking about like Fanboy and Chum Chum or Johnny Test or whatever, stuff that's like 15 to 20 years old. No, I'm talking modern, current day 2020s cartoons. I admittedly don't know if it's right for me to say that I don't like them. It's probably more accurate to say that I don't see myself ever getting into them, but that's beside the point. If this comes off as being lay wrong generation, then so be it. I don't care. I think Smiling Friends and Invincible are... I don't want to say that they're the only good modern cartoons necessarily, but they're the only ones that I like. They're the only ones that I feel comfortable getting into and calling myself a fan of. Everything else can f*** off for all I care. The Hellaverse is... the Hellaverse. The Amazing Digital Circus is fine, but the 1-2 combo of the mediocre, underwhelming finale and the insufferable fanbase and haters turns me away from ever becoming a fan of the show. This might be the first time where a piece of media having a bad fanbase actively makes me not like the piece of media all that much, regardless of its actual quality. This has never actually happened to me before, believe it or not. I am given quite literally no reason to ever go back to or revisit this show at any point in the future. No reason to ever get invested in it. No reason to ever become a fan of it. No reason to ever give it any thought in the future. No reason to ever care about it whatsoever. If I had made a review of the finale, I would never acknowledge the existence of this show ever again after making this review. It's not even fun to hate on it like the Helliverse, which is saying something because, number one, I don't hate this show the same way that I hate the Helliverse, and number two, I don't think the Helliverse is gonna be all that fun to hate on anymore. My review of Hell of a Boss Season 3 is no longer 100% guaranteed to happen. My last mental episode disguised as a video should make that very clear. I think it's very likely that The Amazing Digital Circus will be the only glitch show that I will ever watch. I don't see myself ever watching their other shows, regardless of their quality. It's not the shows themselves. Well, okay, it is a little bit the shows themselves from what I've heard for some of them, but it's mostly the online discourse surrounding these shows that turn me away from ever giving them a chance. In addition to The Amazing Digital Circus, I had plans to watch Murder Drones and the Gameoverse pilot and whatnot at some point, and then potentially make videos on these shows, giving out my thoughts on them. This mental episode that I suffered recently not only convinced me to not review the Amazing Digital Circus finale, but it also convinced me to not even bother with Glitch's other shows, again, regardless of their actual quality. Murder Drones kinda sucks from what I've heard. Like, that's another show with a disappointing and underwhelming finale, apparently, so I'm not even gonna bother watching it. There's no reason for me to get invested in the storyline and the characters and whatever, only for the show to end in a disappointing manner. It'll be a colossal waste of time. Knights of Guinevere and Gameoverse, I'm sure, are good, but I don't see myself watching the pilots for them, nor do I see myself watching them when they become proper shows. It has nothing to do with the shows themselves. I'm sure the pilots are good, and I'm sure the final shows will be good. It's all just because of the online discourse surrounding them. I guess there's a character in Knights of Guinevere that people thought was trans, and then the creator of the show, who also created the Owl House, said that no, this character wasn't trans, and people got angry about this. They made like a huge deal about this, and I just know that this will probably escalate into a much bigger nuisance as soon as this thing gets more episodes. And who knows what other nothing burger bullshit people will make up to get mad at once more episodes come out. It's just not worth it if you ask me, even if the show itself ends up being good. Gameoverse is another show that'll probably be good, but I don't see myself ever getting into it, again, because of the discourse surrounding it. The main character of the show is this cat girl, and people have been complaining online that this character is gooner bait, and that's a bad thing. For some reason. Waiter, my steak is too juicy and my lobster is too buttery. I don't get it. How did the generation that grew up with this and this look at this and think, ew, gooner bait, cringe? Like, what's with all the sudden purity? Seriously, where the hell did this come from? Y'all are acting like Shigo didn't give y'all weird feelings whenever you'd watch Kim Possible as kids. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Much like Knights of Guinevere, this is probably another thing that'll escalate into being a much bigger annoyance once more episodes come out, alongside whatever nothing burger bullshit people will come up with to get mad at. It's boring. It's just exhausting to get into it. I miss when cartoons were fun. I miss when talking about cartoons was fun. I genuinely feel so bad for Alex Hirsch and Rebecca Sugar, like you have no idea. Imagine creating Gravity Falls and Steven Universe, completely unaware of the irreparable damage they would cause to both cartoons as a whole people and online discussions about cartoons. Fun episodic cartoons like Billy and Mandy or the Fairly Odd Parents don't exist anymore because of Gravity Falls and Steven Universe. It has become insufferable to talk about cartoons online nowadays because of Gravity Falls and Steven Universe. You have people online getting into heated arguments over crap that ultimately doesn't matter at the end of the day because of Gravity Falls and Steven Universe. This is not me hating on Gravity Falls or Steven Universe. This is me acknowledging the harmful impact that Gravity Falls and Steven Universe have had on cartoons. Something that I hope other people begin to acknowledge in the wake of the abhorrent discourse surrounding the Amazing Digital Circus, both positive and negative. You can like these two shows and also acknowledge the harm that they have caused to cartoons and cartoon discourse. Cartoons aren't fun anymore because of Gravity Falls and Steven Universe. Talking about cartoons online isn't fun anymore because of Gravity Falls and Steven Universe. I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash for saying this, but if something like Ed, Edd and Eddy came out today, it would either be ignored or hated by the cartoon community just because it doesn't have deep, complex lore like Murder Drones or Hell of a Boss or whatever f***ing garbage y'all watch nowadays. Ed, Edd and Eddy is, get this, a cartoon that's fun. It's a cartoon that you can sit down, put on an episode, any episode, it doesn't matter, and just have a grand old time, a good time watching it. It's a comfort cartoon. There are little to no modern comfort cartoons. The cartoon community has collectively decided that in a post-Gravity Falls and Steven Universe world, comfort cartoons are actually a bad thing and should become obsolete, and so obsolete they became. Obviously, a cartoon being fun and episodic and whatever does not automatically make it good, as evident by shows like Teen Titans Go or The Loud House, but you would have to be delusional to think that having a modern-day 2020s equivalent to Ed, Edd and Eddy would be a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. It's like, imagine, you're depressed, you're stressed out, you're going through some shit right now, and you want to watch something to take your mind off of whatever it is that you're going through. So you sit down, put on an episode of Ed, Edd and Eddy, again, any episode, it doesn't matter, and just have it make you briefly forget about whatever it is that you're going through. Have it bring you an escape from whatever is stressing you out. Have it bring you a little bit of joy and happiness during a time when you desperately need it. You can't get any of this with Has-Been Hotel or The Owl House, okay? That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. You know what? It. Let's make this more controversial. Golden Age SpongeBob would not be the critical darling that it currently is if it came out today. You cannot convince me that Golden Age SpongeBob would still be beloved if it came out today. You cannot convince me that episodes like Band Geeks, Chocolate with Nuts, Graveyard Shift, Wormy, Krusty Krab Training Video, etc. would still be acclaimed if they came out today. Convince me otherwise. I dare you. If Golden Age SpongeBob came out today, the cartoon community would complain about how, oh, there's no metaphors for depression or allegories for trauma, therefore it's bad, therefore it's slop. How dare a cartoon not be complete theory bait, intended to attract the most insufferable people known to mankind, both in terms of people that love the show and people that hate the show. How dare a cartoon be fun? Seriously, a fun cartoon in this economy? Y'all can get mad at me for this, but deep down, you know it's true. You know it's all true. It's controversial because it's true. I would like to say something very quickly. I have made several videos before in the past responding to certain takes held by fellow cartoon YouTuber Animat, giving out my personal disagreements towards these takes. I made 3 videos, one responding to his thoughts on the negative reception to the trailer for Fixed, one responding to his thoughts on the Amazing Digital Circus's fandom harassing Gooseworks, and one responding to his thoughts on the negative reception towards the generic nature nature of the character designs for Disney's upcoming animated film, Hexed. I regret making this second video right here. I genuinely had no idea how much of an insufferable hole the Amazing Digital Circus fandom was when I made this video, and now that I've been made aware of how bad it truly is, I would like to apologize to Animats for this video. I'm not sorry for the fixed or hexed videos. I still stand by everything that I say in those videos, neither of which are harassment or toxic grifting or whatever you may think they are, by the way. I am not sorry for the fixed or hexed videos, but I am sorry for the Amazing Digital Circus video. I'm sorry for even mildly defending the Amazing Digital Circus fandom in any way, shape, or form in this video. I truly had no idea how bad the fandom for this show was when I made this video. Honest to God. All of this discourse, drama, controversy, harassment, whatever, for a show that none of y'all will even remember or care about 4 to 5 years from now. All of this for a show that will have no longevity or legacy of any kind, no cultural impact whatsoever. The underwhelming finale wasn't enough. No, we needed obnoxious back and forth arguments over a stupid purple bunny to further cement that this show will have no legacy of any kind in the future. Whenever I review the Helliverse, I bring up how I don't see either of these shows having any kind of legacy or cultural impact. They're big and popular right now, but absolutely nobody will talk about or care about these shows years on from now because of how bad they are. The people that love these shows right now, they're going to mature, they're going to get older, and they're going to realize the haters were right. These shows are terrible. The chances of this happening have unfortunately decreased significantly due to recent events, but I still hold a little bit of hope that it'll happen regardless. I still hold a little bit of hope that the Helliverse will end up going the same route that Rick and Morty and the Loud House went through, where Rick and Morty and the Loud House were at one point two massively popular shows within the cartoon community. Well, actually no, Rick and Morty was like universally beloved. It was universally famous. It was everywhere. And now we fast forward to 2026, I very rarely, if ever, see anyone acknowledge these shows' existences, for one reason or another. As soon as I finished watching the Amazing Digital Circus's finale, it left me wondering if such a thing could happen with this show as well. And then after becoming emotionally exhausted by the online discourse surrounding this show, as well as for Glitch's other shows, I am not only convinced that it'll 100% happen to the Amazing Digital Circus, but I'm also convinced that it'll happen to Glitch's other shows, regardless of their quality. I just don't see any of these shows having any kind of longevity or cultural impact, whether it be because of their quality, like with the Helliverse, or their online discourse, like with Glitch's cartoons. I know this might seem like a really harsh thing for me to say, especially given how these are all independent small cartoons, but number one, I would still be saying this stuff about these shows if they were made by massive corporations. If Has-Been Hotel and the Amazing Digital Circus were these big corporate Netflix Disney cartoons, I would still hold this belief that they won't have any cultural impact or legacy due to the former's quality and the latter's obnoxious discourse and, admittedly, a little bit of its quality. And number two, considering everything that she had to go through, I'm sure Gooseworks deep down is secretly hoping this thing pulls a f***ing Avatar and ends up having no legacy or cultural impact of any kind. Lord knows, if I made the Amazing Digital Circus and I had to endure what she went through, I'd be hoping this f***ing thing fades into complete irrelevancy in the future, never to be talked about or acknowledged ever again. Can't say I blame her, not one bit. even if it weren't for the harassment and discourse and whatever, the fact that this show is only 9 episodes long, and the fact that it has such an underwhelming finale is enough to hinder whatever chances this show could have had of having like a legacy. It hinders whatever legacy this show will have in the future. There is no reason to ever come back to this show when a lot of things that were established in the previous episodes either don't get resolved whatsoever or get resolved in such an unsatisfying and anticlimactic manner. There is no reason to ever come back to this show when it focuses so heavily on fleshing out just one character without fleshing out the other characters to the same extent. At the same time, I don't see any reason to go over any of this stuff in greater detail, my disappointment towards this stuff, because not only do I think the show is just fine, not only do I not care about this show enough to go over this stuff, not only will this stuff feel disingenuous coming from me, even if it is valid criticism, but also because I don't want to deal with the insufferable fucking discourse surrounding this show. It's just simply not worth it, if you ask me. As per tradition, I will finish up and upload what little I made of this review about a day or two after this video, just for preservation and archival purposes, just so you can get an idea of what could have been, and then after that, I will never acknowledge the existence of the Amazing Digital Circus ever again, because it has given me no reason to ever acknowledge its existence ever again. I don't see this show having any kind of legacy or cultural impact in the future, even if I don't hate the show, even if I don't think it's bad. I don't hate Gooseworks or anything like that. I'm sure she's also hoping that this thing pulls a Rick and Morty or a Loud House, you know? A cartoon that's massively popular today, and then eventually it falls into complete irrelevancy, very rarely if ever being acknowledged again. In 2017, Rick and Morty was the biggest cartoon in the world. It was completely inescapable. In 2026, I very rarely if ever see anyone talk about or even acknowledge Rick and Morty in any way. It's not even like SpongeBob or The Simpsons or Family Guy, where it's long past its prime, but it's still popular. No, it's just vanished out of nowhere, and we don't really acknowledge it. Rick and Morty undeniably had a cultural impact at one point. It's just that cultural impact has been wiped from existence. It's been retconned like it never even happened. In 2017, people were rioting and throwing tantrums at different McDonald's locations just because they didn't carry or were sold out of a sauce referenced in an episode of Rick and Morty. Was it cringe? Absolutely, but it also shows how huge Rick and Morty was back then. Imagine going back in time to this period and telling people that in the future, nobody would care about this show, that people had been throwing tantrums in public restaurants over. They would laugh at you and say that that would never happen, no matter how cringy this stuff may be. Well, look at where we are today, huh? Look at where we are today. In 2026, The Amazing Digital Circus is the biggest cartoon in the world. It is completely inescapable. In 2030, 2031, 2032, whatever, I will very rarely, if ever, see anyone talk about or even acknowledge The Amazing Digital Circus in any way. It will just vanish out of nowhere, and we won't really acknowledge it. The Amazing Digital Circus undeniably has cultural impact right now. It's just that cultural impact will be wiped from existence. It'll be retconned like it never even happened. In 2026, people are arguing about Jax online, with some people calling Jax a precious, innocent baby who would never hurt a fly, and other people calling Jax a horrible, irredeemable monster and one of the evilest characters in cartoon history. Is it cringe on both sides? Absolutely, but it also shows how huge the Amazing Digital Circus is right now. Imagine, in the 2030s, going back in time to this period and telling people that in the future, nobody would care about this show that has a character that people have been getting into heated online arguments over. They would laugh at you and say that that would never happen, no matter how cringy this stuff may be. Well, let's see how things will turn out in the future. Let's see how things will turn out in the future. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see y'all next time. Adios!